This session is a technical session. However, the main focus is on the mobile development. But some of these practices that we suggest here can be used in any other development, such as web or the desktop. The original session plan for today was on the deployment team. However, we are substituting with they have a special task to be carried out, so substitution with a mobile team. This presentation was something I identified. This presentation was used in the Dev Day 2013. That was a paid developer conference held in Sri Lanka. Some of you guys attended that, and the same presentation. But I'm going at high speed on this one today. Focusing on few key elements, not in detail. The real challenge, what we identified so far on mobile application development, is the predictability. The moment the application has a complexity involved with it, the delivery time gets impacted. So the target audience is ideally app developers who are challenged by derivatives, that is demanding high stability, continuous injection of defects, and random map crashes, and so on and so forth. This can go on and on. In a standard development mode, what is really hard to manage is the regression defect. On a project plan, you rarely focus on a regression effort, but however, if the regression effects, if the defect injection keeps growing, you'll end up in a situation where your project is unmanageable and you're not achieving your deadlines. Predictability is impacted. So having these even random map crashes eats up a lot of time to fix these over a period of time. So what's the solution for this? What are we looking at? So before we really look at the solutions, let's look at how engineers of the other discipline solve problems. This is, even though this looks funny, some of these are actual practical solutions. Does it move based on yes and no? If it is yes, should it move? If it is not, duct tape is your best solution. Most of it. The question that I ask at this point is, this looks funny, but however, we as software engineers, do we do anything different? Do we, when there's a problem, apart from focusing and fixing that, do we take a step back and think along these lines, whether we can solve it better, whether we can fix these on a long-term solution basis? Now coming back to a point where I'm going to think of what are the key success factors of a startup. The first point that I'm trying to stress is, any startup, for you to have a highly predictable, any startup, you need to have founders who have strong leadership skills, charisma, and communication skills. Any successful startup, what you have seen today, would have very strong founders. The other one is the vision. Vision to make the company unique and vision to make a great product. There has to be that vision very clear in a company that is built. Third one, you need to have a very strong team. And a team who can execute the project, and also they can make sure that project is sustainable over a period of time. Then the other factor is the market opportunity. Even though you have a good leadership, founders, vision, and a team to do that, there are certain startups that fail simply because there is no market opportunity. So that has to be there as well. There's no excuse for not having a market. Third point, the fifth point rather, high quality product. So having a high quality product has multiple variables to it. It has to be innovative and it has to be really useful and so on. So in this stack, the predictability comes in fourth, the last one, or rather the fifth one, where anything above is not scope of this. What we are mainly focusing is, if we decide to build a high quality product, what do we need to do right? So let's look at those. Some of the engineers or individuals in this business would vote for having the right technological stack. Right technology selection would be the key for a product. That would be some of our first step. Someone would argue, no, you need to have very high engineering rigor for you to build a high quality product. And there can be another idea saying, hey, we need to have a technical architecture and design in order to build a great product. And then other party would say performance tuning is the key. You need to use your performance of the product to go. The reality is, success factor of a high quality product is none of these. So if the list can go on, there's no limit to that. What we see is, one factor is on-time delivery. If your product is not delivered on time, the chances of your product getting successful is very low. Because if you keep building a product, doing all the architectural adjustments, the improvements, however, if your product is not out there, highly likely that there will be another competitor out there will take the chance. So on-time delivery is what is important. It's not about, I'm not talking about early delivery or taking something not production ready to market, but agree upon a date, agree upon a time period and delivering on that time. The other one is the functional beauty. Whatever the application that you put out should have very nice functionality, addictive functionality. People need to come back to this application to do something. So that kind of functionality has to be in your application for it to be successful. Third point is user experience. The functional beauty and the user experience are somewhat related. However, we see them as two different concerns. We look at the functionality as how you build the product market fit, how you find the product market fit. There is a market which requires a product like this. That is the functional beauty. And the user experience is when a user is working on the system, how effectively the product can help the user. So these happen to be the key success factors of products which are popular today in the market. And if you try to align this with any of the startup products, any of the new products which is out there, those products came to the market on time, before anything else. Those products had very nice functionality which the users were addicted from a functionality perspective. And the user experience was simplified and elegant on those products. So if these are the key success factors, as an engineering team, how do we align ourselves to these three factors so that we can deliver a product which aligns with these, and it is highly likely that your product will be successful. So then comes the challenge of being predictable. The challenge means being predictable. So high quality product depends on these three factors: on-time delivery, functional beauty, and the user experience. So this is based on a study of analyzing products which is out there today and taking their most common factors, denominators out, saying these three depends on the quality of product. Quality in terms of being popular, being making revenue, and being out there for a while without being overrun by competition. So my focus is Android and Apple. Let's look at this graph and let's see how this works. On the x-axis, I have the challenges, regression defects, aggressive timelines, adding new developer, bus factor, missing usage, analytics, random crashes, manual testing, beta distribution. Those are the challenges of a standard mobile developer. And on the left, I have the key success factors: on-time delivery, UX, functional beauty. Does anyone know what is the bus factor? So bus factor is the possibility of one of your team members getting hit by a bus, and suddenly that team member is no more. Then how is that impact your usual delivery? Predicted. Alright, let's look at the first case. Okay, so there is a color blind spot. This is supposed to be red on the screen, however you don't see that. So what it means is, if you have regression defects that directly impacts on your on-time delivery, adding a new developer, does that impact on your on-time delivery, which is a neutral color. So it has, according to the original size, this is red, this is ash, so no impact, and this is medium. So you can pick any two categories and figure out the UX. Is UX impacted by your user? Let's take two categories randomly and see what you feel. Right? User experience versus manual testing. If you do a lot of manual testing, is user experience impacted by that in a bad way or in a good way? For user experience, what is the favorable mechanism of testing? Automation or manual testing? Manual testing, because end of the day, automation could figure out only whether there are problems or whether there are regression issues. To discover, to feel it, you need to get manual testing. So manual testing is a good deal for user experience. But manual testing, is it so good for on-time delivery? No, it might not, right? So you need to, if you need on-time delivery, this is something adding, it is counterproductive. So let's go to the other situation. Even here, I have a bunch of colors. Unfortunately, the colors are not visible here. I'm taking, if you have a crash report, how does that, if you have a crash report and if you have lots of aggressive timelines, how would that impact the overall project? Having aggressive timelines and having crash report, having crash reporting, can that help or not? It will help you. It will at least give you the issues up front, so you know what are the highly prioritized issues. Rather, if you don't have crash reporting, maybe at the end of delivery, maybe before you push it to production, you might see a crash somewhere, and you have to recreate that, and you have to spend a lot of time on that. Like if you have crash reporting, so let's understand what crash reporting is. If you have crash reporting, that will give you better insight into the problem. So I'm trying to summarize this solution. How to achieve predictability in two aspects. Now this is something we have figured out within LeapSec, right? And when this was presented at Dev Day, that was my message. This is not something that we have borrowed. This is based on our own experience. we had a situation where our mobile delivery was 300% out of schedule. Our schedule variance was 300%. If we said 100 hours, we end up working 300 hours, 400 hours. So schedule variance itself is 300%. Then we got some of the practices in place. And do we know what is the schedule variance today of mobile delivery? For the last 1 year, we are having a schedule variance of less than 1%. And that 1% most of the time attached to some of the scope creep and some of the changes that some of the CRs that we accepted at a very late stage. So based on our experience, what we present is, if you need predictability, if you need to make sure that your delivery happens on time, there are two things that you need to invest in. One is automation, one is insight and analytics. This is not the insight project, this is having an insight into what you do in day-to-day basis. If you get these two sorted, you achieve higher level of predictability. Right? Now, even having these two areas implemented, there still can be issues like your requirements are getting changed. Your developers have skill gaps. Your developers are finding hard to fit into this team. Those issues still can exist and they can impact directly. But however, what we believe is, most of the teams you have a bunch of decent developers who are skilled, who know what they are doing, but the overall practices that we have put in place, or the process that we have put in place, has gaps. So this is not going to be a silver bullet fixing all the problems. However, what we suggest is, if you have these two, at least upfront, you know your problems. So let's look at the automation. What can we do with automation? I have a joke here. What I'm going to say is, unit testing is a must. If you don't do it, you just have to get it done. Acceptance testing is something new, something that we invested a lot in LeapSet mobile team, and now we have built skills within that. While we build our features of the application on a parallel thread, we build the automation testing. So even developers and the QA gets the benefit of that. And our latest release of 3 months of development, last stable consumer was 3 months of development, had led to, all in all, after the full QA cycle, only 40 defects. Out of those 40, it turned out to be only 50 defects are what we're really focusing on. The rest of the defects are not actual functional defects. They went into categories like as designed, some of the requirements documents were not updated. What related to code was 15 defects. And out of those 15, 8 and 7. 8 on the iOS or Android and 7 on the other. So that's a great achievement. Things like that are possible only because we are investing a lot on parallel threads. Right? Unit testing is invested. The coverage, code coverage by unit testing is slightly above 80%, which is an overkill in a certain extent, but that end result is very less defects. And when 4 developers are working on building functionality, 1 developer parallelly building regression test suite. Right? So it's 4:1 ratio. So there might be a question, if we have 50 developers, is it possible to have such a large regression team? So whether this can be scaled to a 100-member team, is that possible? That is something we haven't tried. But what we have practiced is, if we have 4 developers, having 1 guy to do regression is working for us. Maybe this model can be scaled to 10 developers. After that, we need to figure out how else to do it. Maybe every developer writes their regression list, right? Some other practices. This tool is called Calabash. Open source, freely available. You can do a lot of stuff with this. Supports you write the script in Ruby, suppose Objective-C, Java, so Android. What I'll do is I'll quickly show you a video of. I'm not going to go into these details. This is the architecture, not even the architecture. I'll show you a quick video of how it works. So it mimics how a manual test is being done, records that, and plays back over and over. If it fails at one point, a screenshot is taken with the error log, and that is being pushed to a report. And in that report, you can figure that out and understand. Second automated aspect that we have looked at is, in generally a practice from the API platform backend development is a continuous build. As far as I know, when we plan this out, nobody in the market has invested on a continuous build for a mobile. So we took a challenge. We wanted to configure Jenkins and see how that works for a mobile project. We gave it a try, and that really worked for us. Within the build, we ran the regression test suite, and also we were able to upload this to our distribution channel as well, which is the test live, which comes in another channel. So the standard look, most of you guys are familiar with Jenkins, so I'm not going to go into details of this. It tells you the mobile build, the status of mobile build at any given time. So every check-in runs this build. So at a very early stage, you know the issues with your mobile phone. Another big challenge was code inspection, static code analysis for languages other than Java. Java as a language having code analysis for more than 5-6 years, and that was mainstream. That was not even considered as something nice to have. You compile it, you should have it, but unfortunately on the mobile world, the Android inherits Java, it has the Java, you can run the same or similar tools. But on the Objective-C, this was a missing area, missing link. And most of the people were never talking about these issues. They were like, we don't do static code analysis on our Java. We managed to figure out CLAN static analyzer, which actually used for C and C++. The Ubuntu and the Linux code base uses this. We got it configured to run it on Objective-C and gives us very clear feedback on how that works. So I'm not going to go into this. Let me quickly show something on that line. Build this out. A billboard. This is Linux code base as of 2014 321 field 1. Let's go to that field. And this is the report. Let's see. Let's go to a simple defect, something that we all understand. Division by 0. And logic error, division by 0 in your drivers USB core hub.c. So in Linux, USB core hub.c has a division by 0 issue. Let's look at that. They annotate the code so that you can understand it here. So there is a division by 0 getting injected. Cursor is getting divided by HDEF and getting assigned here. So HDEF, probably at one point there's no value assignment. A 0 can go in, and this division should fail. And the way it shows on the source code is really impressive. It annotates on top of your source code and says, this is the problem, this is right. This kind of visualization was not even found in other Azure languages. And we got the advantage of that. And this teaches the developer this is the problem, rather than simply failing at that. The other quick one is the big deal in mobile development is the app distribution. You build an app, and now you need to give this to other people to test. In Android, this is a very easy deal. Copy the file, we call it APK file, and just give it to anyone with an Android. Android being an open source, open platform, you can simply copy that file into your phone and it works. But when it comes to iOS, this is not such an easy deal. You need to add your phone to a developer contract, a certification process, then bring the app, install it, keep tracking, and after 30 days, I believe the app is getting expired, and all that complications are built. So we figured out in mobile, when we do a build, you complete your code. However, getting this distributed to the larger audience like QA and product managers and some other team members to have a look at this takes humongous amount of time, because you need to bring their phone, plug that in, get this stuff in, and sometimes the security certificate cert is expired and you have to deal with all that. And then again you need to have a question of what is the version that I'm installing here. Sometimes people need an older version. Okay, I'm connected to TST1. I need a build from TST1. I need a build from dev. I need a build from another QA server. Right? Managing multiple servers, multiple environments, and multiple builds. So this became a real time killer. And then again, this we observe over a period of time. A lot of our time is getting wasted simply because we stop a developer who's working on the code to say, release a build now for this individual on this development branch, on this development environment. Solution for that was something that we figured out, a private app store. Right? You can have your organization level app store which manages each provisions of your app plus different environments. Today this is injected into the whole org. Whenever there's a new member who wants to look at the mobile app, we simply add them into the system. Be it QA or product or anyone else, we add it. And it will install something on the phone, do all the needed communication, all certificates are installed, managed, and in minutes you are up and running. And you can go try any app that we have in our private store, Leadsen store. And this can be integrated with our Jenkins. Every time we do a build, the latest version is pushed into this app store and anyone can give it a try. So we cut down time which is disturbing developers while working for release X while working on release X, not to focus on anything else. So this is how it works. You distribute your apps and it does some of the analytics of who's using this and stuff like that. So you have some reports as well. I have sent the invite to this person, but that person has not yet accepted the invite. That person has not yet downloaded that. We can see that kind of statistics. So when we send an app for a tester or for a product manager, we exactly know whether the product manager downloaded the app, whether the product manager installed the app. All that information is with us. And we even go to another level, it is again part of this. We give a bill to a particular person, what that person did with this bill. Did he order? Did he try the order flow? So that concludes the efforts that we put in, the initiatives that we put in to automate this. Right? Next one is what we realize. There are things which are automated. However, if we don't understand our own process and if we don't have numbers of what we do day-to-day basis, we wouldn't be able to make changes to the process. Right? So you need to have very clear insights and analytics into what you do your day-to-day basis. For that, we got a bunch of analytics and insights built into the system. So we started with a crash report. If it crashes anywhere, unlike a web application. If the web application crashes, you go to the web server, pull up the log file, you have the issue. But think of that in a mobile app. It's distributed among so many people, and it runs on their own phone rather. And if it crashes, that crash is only known to the person who has the phone. The developer, highly unlikely developer gets to know about it unless that person comes and tells you. We record that and push that crash logs to a central server. So at any given time, we understand when people are trying to do stuff, if it has impacted the application and crash, that information is received. So let's look at actual example. Let's look at something on production. So this is the view. These are all the apps we have deployed. Deepset consume app. Let's go with the Android app. These are all the versions. What is in production right now is, so these are 6 issues, right? So at least we know that in our production, when people use, we have a user base between 1,000 to 5,000. For the last release, these 6 issues has occurred and has contributed 30 crashes. We can go into details. I just picked one from Dinindu to show you guys this. According to, so this has happened 1.51, and he confirmed this is fixed in 1.52, right? This. So what it does. So let's look at the row view. We all understand this exception view. A null point exception has occurred, right? So something that we have missed very badly. However, that exception has, somehow we have got that exception in production. A better view. Now it explains at each level when you what you stack. A step-by-step approach and the classes with the exact line up. Now it boils down all of your time to go figure out what happened, when that happened, all that, to a specific case and specific line number. So which makes it much easy for a developer to go and fix it. And we track them. What I do usually, if a defect is closed, we mark that as closed. And so take the word, okay, this was closed. By any chance, if this occurs in the production environment again, this gets reopened. And that is being tracked as a defect that is reopened. So that we know the previous fix that we put in was not so successful. We have that level of analytics into the problems, and we understand the abilities of each engineer after a period of time having these analytics. Alright. So that was about Crashlytics, which gives you, this is called remote crashing reports. The installation keys and probably the last but not the least is who is using this application and how do they use the application, and statistic about the usage. How do we track that? A tool called Mixpanel, a free tool, a Silicon Valley startup. They have done a very good job on this. They retain the data as well for a while, and they have NDAs saying that we cannot, they will not use this data for anything other than serving our needs. So what it can give you is, let me quickly go to an example. Look at this one. How do my app users invite their friends? Is a question that I have based on the activities that is being that's being carried out by the developers. Carried out by the application users itself. According to this, people invite their friends here. mainly on Google Plus, and then probably Facebook, then email. And even though email is an expensive way of expensive feature to integrate with a mobile phone, because it has a cost involved, it has not been so popular as Google Plus. If we don't have this kind of analytics, we wouldn't have, we don't understand how users are using some of our features. What are our most popular features? So this is one such thing. By the way, this is not about, this is a sample screen, this is not LeapSet data that we are looking at. Which campaign gives us the most paying customers? So you can plot your and the duration, and can give you brand names, competitors, display, or whatever the campaigns that you define. So this kind of information. What we found out after using Mixpanel on our own consumer app, and this is something John sort of figured out after looking at our data set. Even though it was there in our data set, even we have not noticed that before. The retention of our application, that is, once they install, the rate at which they come back to our application is 80%. Right? The fallout, or the people who stop using the application, is 20%. What that means is people continuously use that application to order, reorder, and for so many features. Compared to Bustable Consumer, which has a very high download ratio, so their application is SEO friendly, found on the web, and people try it first time, but the retention is only 20%. They don't use the app over and over. On our side, retention is 80%, which is a good deal. However, the application downloads are not getting increased. So our application is not popular. But once a user logs into the application, starts using, he or she keeps using that. So that we can prove from stats. So that kind of statistics gives you real good insight into what you build and what you can focus on end of releases. Who would pay or okay, integration is something simple as this. There's a token that you need to pass, a password. You get a Mixpanel instance, and in each level you can send information. So let's say you want to track something. This is the object. You simply say track this event, and these are the properties of that event, and push them. So that goes to the server. Later you can have bunch of queries and reports generated based on that. Android is pretty much the same thing. You do a factory call get instance and set these properties and try. Simple as that. It's a very simple integration. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. If you have questions, you can take it now. Alright, thank you very much.